Part of Japan's pre-war submarine strategy called for some submarines to be fitted out as command vessels for the deployed squadrons. These would be the Type A cruiser submarines, and as such, they were relatively rare. With the Japanese entry into World War II, more submarines were requested, including 5 Type A Mod 1s, also known as the I-12 class or project number S-35B. These were essentially repeats of the massive I-9 class, displacing just under 3,000 tons when surfaced, but where the I-9s used almost 12,500 brake horsepower from 2 diesels to hit almost 24 knots on the surface, the I-12s would use a mere 9,400 brake horsepower to reach a more pedestrian 17.5 knots. Some of this saved weight was put into extra fuel, allowing them to go up to 22,000 nautical miles at 16 knots. But by 1943, with the Agano and Oyodo class cruisers expected to take over command roles for a number of submarine squadrons, and with the cancellation of several of the massive I-400 class, the remaining 4 submarines of this run, I-13 through to I-15 and I-1, with the latter replacing the previous I-1, which had recently been wrecked running aground, were ordered to be converted to the Type AM standard, a modified design which was supposed to supplement the now limited number of I-400s. The Type A family all carried a single scouting aircraft in a hangar which was integrated to the forward part of the conning tower, a feature that was actually found in quite a few large Japanese submarines. In I-13 onwards, this was replaced with an enlarged facility capable of holding a pair of single-engine floatplane attack aircraft, the Aichi M6A1 Seiran, I think. Seiran, maybe? 3 of which were to be carried in the I-400s. To make room for this facility, the command and control features were deleted and the conning tower was slightly offset to port. Engine power and fuel storage also had to be reduced to make room for the aircraft supplies, with diesel power now down to just 4,400 brake horsepower from 2 diesels. The top speed on the surface was just under 17 knots and a mere 5.5 knots underwater, with range at 16 knots being reduced to 21,000 nautical miles. 6 torpedo tubes in the bow, each had a single reload, and there was a 5.5-inch deck gun aft and a smattering of 25mm anti-aircraft guns. The hangar, aircraft, and associated supplies and crew pushed displacement up just a touch, displacing now just over 3,600 tons on the surface and just over 4,700 tons submerged. I-13 and I-14 were laid down in 1943 and completed and commissioned in late 1944 and early 1945 respectively. Alongside I-400 and I-401, these submarines were due to attack the Panama Canal, with the 4 subs thus bringing a total of 10 aircraft to bear, but with Allied air raids and an earthquake delaying the delivery of sufficient M6A1s, the war continued to advance, and by summer 1945 it was felt that an attack on Panama was probably going to have little effect on a US Navy that was operating off of the Japanese coastline, and so the converted submarines, plus I-400 and I-401, were sent to attack Ulithi using conventional weapons instead. I-13 and I-14 were to transport Scion recon aircraft to Truk, where they would then use their high speed to recon Ulithi and ensure that US carriers were present. The I-400s would then launch their 6 M6A1 aircraft in a low-level Dawn kamikaze strike. It was hoped that a few more M6A1s would be ready by then, and the 2 subs would then drop back to Singapore, picking up newly completed aircraft and join up with the I-400s, who would also be restocking, and then they'd attempt to repeat the attack. However, I-13 was detected on the surface and sunk by a US escort carrier-based hunter-killer group on her way to Truk, and the surrender of Japan was announced before I-14 could leave Truk. She was then surrendered to the USS Murray on her way back to Japan, and then taken along with the I-400s for examination in the US at the end of the war. I-15 was still fitting out in July 1943 when it was decided that she would be converted yet again, this time to become a fuel tanker submarine, but the war appears to have ended before anything more than paperwork was completed for this proposed conversion, and she would be scuttled in April 1946 off the coast of Japan. I1 was only partially completed with the propeller shafts and electric motors but no diesels installed when work was halted at some point after her launch in June 1944. Depending on which source you believe, she remained at either 40% or 70% completion until a typhoon flooded her on September the 18th, 1945, which caused her to sink at her moorings, and from where she was later salvaged and then scrapped in April 1947.
That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you have a comment or suggestion for a ship to review, let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to comment on the pinned post for dry dock questions.